The topic is the role of religion in public life, and we're talking to Dr. Baldwin from Vanderbilt University. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, before we ended our first segment, we promised that we'd give you an opportunity to talk about the expansion of religion in public life, and let us do that now.
The point I tried to make before the break, of course, is to sort of give some historic background on this whole issue, because one of the many of the questions that confronted the founding fathers, of course, had to do with the role of religion in public life. Should religion have a role in government decision making? Should morality have a role in democratic lawmaking? These are the kinds of questions that were raised at that time. Interestingly enough, during the civil rights movement, many of the same kinds of questions were raised as Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr. and others put religion to the service of their struggle for equal rights and economic justice and peace. Should religion be involved in that kind of movement?
The civil rights movement.
Yeah, should it be involved in the civil rights movement? Should religious convictions play a role in political activity? These are kinds of questions that Dr. King confronted. And interestingly enough, he was able to combine moral religious convictions with political activity as he put the church at the center of the civil rights movement. As you well know, the church became a kind of power base for Dr. King and others, became a de facto platform, social and political base, as they struggle for racial justice, economic justice, and peace. Interestingly enough, since Dr. King's time, we've continued to engage in this kind of debate about the role of religion in the public arena. Interestingly enough, after King was assassinated in 1968, we began to notice in the early 1970s the rise of what we call the religious right.
Good. Okay.
These are conservative, fundamentalist Christians, evangelical Christians, who believe in making their religion relevant to public policy issues like abortion, affirmative action, reparations, women's rights, public education. Interestingly enough, in the 1970s, we not only saw the rise of the religious right, or what some call the resurgence of the religious right, we also saw a wedding of the religious and the political right.
Okay, good.
Meaning that the more conservative politicians on the right merged with religious right people to pursue a kind of conservative agenda. And interestingly enough, Dr. King was looked upon as a kind of model by people like Jerry Falwell, who founded the Moral Majority in 1979. Those Christian evangelicals who founded the Religious Roundtable in 1980. Pat Robertson, Jerry Falwell, James Robinson, all of those who were connected with what we call televangelism or the electronic church, began to pursue a different kind of agenda. They were not concerned so much with the issues of race and diversity and affirmative action. What they were concerned about was putting religion to the service of their movement against abortion, against gay marriage, against homosexuality, against women's rights. So I see a difference between what Dr. King was trying to do and what we see in more recent times with those who are part of the religious right. Dr. King used religion to empower people, to extend the rights of people, civil rights, basic constitutional rights, the right to vote, the right to hold public office. But what we've seen since Dr. King's death with the religious right, who also employ religion in their public debates and in their efforts
and speak Dr. King's name.
Yes, yes, who use Dr. King as a model. In fact, Jerry Falwell has often said that we need to resort to the kind of tactics, civil disobedience tactics that Dr. King employed in order to make our point about abortion and pornography and affirmative action and women's rights and gay rights and those kinds of issues. But what I see, what I've seen since Dr. King's death, of course, is what I call the public perversion of religion. That is, religion is used to disempower people as opposed to empowering them as Dr. King did. And by the word disempowering for me means, of course, that they are using religion to limit the rights of people, to challenge the civil liberties of people. For an example, if we can put our religion to the service of the anti-abortion movement, it means that women won't have the right to make decisions about, you know,
abortion, about their own life, as they
do. Yes, that women won't have the final decisions about what role they should play in public life, in the church, in ministry.
That's disempowerment.
Exactly. And I think Dr. King was concerned about employing religion as a way of empowering people. And what we see today, I think, on a large scale, is that religion is being used to disempower people.
You know, one of the things I think you mentioned earlier, you talked about what you call the mega church. What is this organization?
Well, the mega church phenomenon has developed over the last half century. Certainly, when we speak of the mega church, we're talking about those churches, some scholars would say, that consist of 5,000 or more members. We know about Eddie Long's church in Georgia. We know about Paul Morton's church. We know about Creflo Dollar. We know about T.D. Jakes. These are known as mega church pastors and also televangelists. These churches, interestingly enough, are a new and emerging phenomenon in black religious life. And they have not only the numbers, 10, 15, 20,000 members, they also have the personnel, they have the resources, they have the connections, and they are run pretty much like corporations that hew to a strict biblical line. And interestingly enough, the question being raised today by many of us who are church historians or theologians is, what role will the mega church phenomenon, what role will the mega churches play in addressing public policy matters and in public life generally? And one of the problems we find, of course, is that these churches, because they have taken on many of the trappings or the images of the corporation, are not prepared to do the kind of prophetic social witness that Dr. King got involved in. And I think that's one difference between Dr. King and his use of religion in public life and what we are seeing with mega churches today.
Very good. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, let me interrupt here for this second commercial break, after which we'll come back and we'll have you to elaborate upon the distinctions that you find between these large churches and traditional religion. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. The topic is the role